Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we discuss the future of wellness and safety in schools, asking the question, can technology bridge the gap between the internet and common sense? We'll learn about innovations that connect kids to online tools that they like and have a positive impact on their future. From Bryce Baker, the co-founder of Pixel Digital Health, a tech company that specializes in online tools for schools. Bryce, tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got to this space today.
Hey, great to be with you here on the show. I grew up in Park City, Utah. We've spoken about this, and I just had such a great childhood being in the mountains, growing up outside, just doing things that I feel like kids should do. Biking, hiking, that sort of thing. And, eventually went to work in San Francisco, a finance job before COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the whole world obviously went into lockdown, and with that came unintended consequences. A lot of people found themselves really relying on technology for connection because we couldn't be face to face and person to person. And I think at the beginning, it felt like maybe it was a substitute that could last. And I think as COVID progressed, people realize maybe the trade-off isn't so good when we lose some of the person to person. And this is something that's been going on long before COVID. I think COVID just accelerated a lot of these, and as a kid, I didn't use YouTube until probably age 12, 13, which would be 10 years later than most kids today. And it just wasn't a big part of my life growing up. And, today, that's not the story for most young families. And I think I started to look into the data because I personally was not feeling so good about my technology use during COVID. My co-founder, Solomon, had the same experience. We both were going through personal struggles and difficulties and relied on our devices, whether that was phones, social media, etc., to cope and find some connection. And both of us found like there was something lacking there. And so that was really the start of our journey.
So now you're basically a fairly young startup, but you've made a big splash. So you targeted an area of need and came to serve it. And I agree with you when you said that most of these issues started before COVID. We've looked at most major trends affecting children's mental health and other issues, and they actually started more with the advent of social media and all these tools, but COVID really accelerated it. Basically, it made access wider, it forced it on kids and adults, and the negative and highly addictive properties were pretty influential in people's lives. When we were talking about this early on, you had mentioned something in a distinction I have since realized most people don't get. And that's the difference between the internet and the web. Can you define that because knowing that just is mind blowing. I mean, once you get that, you understand how you have so much more choice than you might imagine. Can you talk about that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned the trends. You look at mental health trends from 2010, which is when smartphones proliferated. And then anytime you see an uptick in social media use, you see a decrease in mental health measures. So whether it's depression, anxiety, you hit the nail on the head there. So we've been seeing this for a long time. I just wanted to make sure, we understood that this was not COVID only, COVID accelerated. I think, when we think about the best way to put this would be, a 2,000 calorie diet doesn't tell you anything more than that's 2,000 calories. And so if you have two different people eating 2,000 calories, you might have one person eating only Tootsie Rolls to fill their entire 2,000 calories, whereas the other person might be eating a more well-balanced diet, consists of fruits and vegetables, protein, and other things. And I think when we think about internet and you're talking about choice, people are making a lot of different choices online, some of which are healthy and some of which are very unhealthy. And when we look at the kind of spectrum of use, what are the things you could be doing online? The general rule of thumb is that the things that are more active use, so whether it's learning, using tools to learn online, whether it's tools to connect, even messaging, calls, all of those things are on the positive end of the spectrum in terms of these are things that are good for you that can be facilitated by online experiences. When you look at the other end, we call it more passive use. So sort of letting things happening to you on the internet is, you talk about in terms of choice, those are usually more poor choices. So whether we call that doom scrolling, if you're just sitting there and sort of seeing what comes to you, if you're on YouTube and you're letting the video just play and play and autoplay, that sort of becomes when we start to see the more negative consequences of mental health, physical health, well-being. So I think thinking it in terms of a diet, I think, is really productive.
Yeah, another way I heard of describing it was that the internet itself is like a highway system.
Hmm.
It's a connection, a bunch of connections and highways, a way to get places. And the web is actually the traffic on that highway, the trucks, the buses. And so we all combine them. And sometimes we feel as if we're bound to the traffic when really we have the freedom to choose what we do on the internet, because that's what the web is. A whole bunch of shopping places basically where we can make connections and choose. So we're going to take a short break. And then I'd like to touch base on what really got you the idea of working with the age groups you work with and getting to schools, why that was so important. So stay tuned. We'll see you all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
that's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
I think it's just vapor with flavor.
It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes, right?
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
My kid?
My kid
Knows it's dangerous.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Bryce from Pixel Digital Health, about the mental health crisis in America, the increasing dependence on technology in our lives, and solutions that can improve educational outcomes. And for Iowans especially, that's important. Our kids and our families are number one in our priority list. So Bryce, your company decided to look at this. How did you pick the markets, the ages? What really brought you to where you are today? And tell us a little bit about what you do today too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started, me and my co-founder experiencing these issues, we were living together in San Francisco at the time, and we started looking at all the research that was being done on this issue, on media's effect on mental health. And actually, most of the rest of the world was really far ahead of the US at the time. We had places like Australia, the UK, China, putting out a lot of research explaining not only what they were finding, but also what the solutions were. And when we started to think and read these papers, it was really clear that when you taught kids about the media that they were using, the technology and the devices they were using, they actually did want to change their ways, in the sense of they knew that they weren't happy using it the way they were currently using it, and they knew that there was probably a better way. And so when we started to look at all the various interventions and papers, it was really clear that a few things were super clear. Number one is that kids really didn't like the idea that they were being used by technology. They wanted to be using it as a tool. They didn't want to be used by technology. And the second was that from a young age, they were really impressionable with some of these topics. So when we thought about where do we even start here, it seemed like from around the age of 8 all the way through, mid-20s, kids were really willing to learn about these topics and subjects and change their behavior in ways that were really meaningful for their mental and physical health. And so the start of our program was, number one, basically going out and finding all of these experts that were writing these papers or creating these interventions to actually help change behavior. And we brought in a lot of them to actually help build them from scratch based here in the US. So taking all of their research, their interventions, basically mapping them out to be able to hand them to schools. And that's where we started, which was help schools give curricula for this topic. You might say when sex ed started in schools, it was something that people thought was kind of wild and out there. And now today, we feel like there really needs to be a necessity to have you teaching and learning digital wellness topics. And so we started all of that from kind of, the research and the work that was done all over the world.
It's interesting because in Iowa, the organization I'm affiliated with developed a digital literacy and wellness program, and the the professionals that work on ours, you are familiar with the ones that work on yours. And as we develop the framework for what Iowa needs to do to move into the future in the classroom, all of a sudden we run into you guys and find out you're right there. You've figured that out, but you have the technological aptitude and the ability, and now of course the growth and the feedback. What we found here in Iowa, which I found most interesting in talking to you about what you're doing, is that if we improve the digital wellness and health of children in Iowa, we reduce high-risk behavior by youth, their wellness improves, they're happier, they do less drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and they become a better student. And at the same time, teachers learn with them, and they really appreciate the fact that even though there's a vast chasm of differences between the young kids using digital media and our educational forces, which are older typically and not as well versed in media, this is a common ground to become healthy together. And these tools that we probably frowned upon 10 or 15 years ago, online tools, especially knowing the difference between intranet and web-based stuff, so that traffic, all of a sudden now we're a portal to connecting the old and the new, the young and the old, and raising the bar on this performance in education, which in Iowa is a big priority for us in the Midwest, and I'm sure it is nationally. How are you addressing that with some of the educational partners you're working with?
Yeah, so one of the most integral parts of being able to develop this solution, you talked about technology and its ability to help scale. We built a software and portal that allowed us to figure out at what age the material is most appropriate to be delivered. So we spent a ton of time trialing and erroring, piloting at different schools, summer programs, after-school programs. We partnered with so many that have helped us get to where we are today, whether it's local Utah organizations from where I'm from, like Live Like Sam, or more national organizations like Major League Baseball that are having issues with their players. That was really the basis for how we've been able to improve, which was starting with a software to be able to have kids tell us, first of all, how they're feeling about technology and usage. Second, after they learn these materials, how do their behaviors change? So we have the ability to sort of get I guess you'd call it a blood pressure measure for their digital wellness. So we can get a quick read as to how they're being affected and the degree in which they're being affected. We can give them materials and then see where they improve to. And, we've seen such incredible results from the first, year that the program's been fully live, not only just changing their levels in terms of, kids are sleeping more, they're happier, they're more focused, but also that they love the program. They realize the value of the program. They realize the value of the knowledge. And so that's been really important for us. We've surrounded ourselves with partners, across not only education, but, I mentioned outside of education, serious treatments, centers, and I'll get into our therapy as well, because that's ended up being a key component of what we can deliver.
Well, that's really fantastic. We're going to take another short break, and we'll continue our conversation with Bryce. This is really some interesting material. Stay tuned. You do not want to miss this.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove.
You told me not to do drugs.
You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking to Bryce, and we're learning about innovations that connect children and educators with a unique benefit to the classroom experience. Bryce, tell us a little bit more about how this connects to schools and how it works.
Yeah, so, one thing we realized really quickly was that school decision makers, whether it was superintendent, principal, teacher, they wanted to know that whatever they were doing was working. So the first part of our program is a baseline assessment for your entire, all the grades in your schools, anything from grade 3 through 12 right now we cover, and allows all these different stakeholders to get an idea of their baseline digital wellness. And, the first step for any school is to just reach out, because we give you that for free. So, from day one, you can take that baseline assessment to get a sense for where are your kids on this issue, start the conversation to get it going. And from there, after you take the program, all of these different decision makers can then go and look at the data and say, wow, not only did this work, they can now present this to the parents in parent workshops, which we run as well. And all of a sudden the parents are able to buy in on this, because the solution is, it has to be tackled on multiple fronts, not just at school, but at home. And so by presenting the data to the parents and saying, wow, look at the effect of when your kids are sleeping more, for example, because they're not checking social media at 3 a.m, because maybe they're not sleeping with their phone in their room anymore. All these different tips and tricks that we can start giving that are all data backed and evidence based is really how it starts. So, basically when you say, how does this work from a front to back, it's assessments taken. We give you all the materials to teach this. It's generally taught in health class across the country. We're now live in 9 states. Thousands of kids have taken our program. Tens of thousands are on the wait list for early fall. And, we pride ourselves in being very turnkey for teachers, in that from the time they see our material and log in, we've had most teachers teaching this in under a half hour, because we've given basically just the entirety of the curriculum in various formats that make it really quick. So we give, quick impact statements, summaries, and all the materials, the videos, the activities are all pre-prepared, not just by us, but by experts around the world. Whether it's someone who leads a family health lab at Michigan, who developed a specific intervention around body image to understand how to develop self-confidence, whether it's the ex-global head of policy at TikTok, who actually helped us develop our misinformation lessons so that kids can understand how to tell what's real and fake online. All this stuff has been created and made really ready and easy for administrators and teachers to use.
Can you share some stories about some of the responses you had and some of the experiences that you've had, in your time putting this out in the schools?
Yeah, it's been really fun, because usually we have kids right away that take to this content and they sort of become the leaders in their school, I guess you could say. And you socialize a new kind of behavior just by starting with a few kids that really connect with this. And then all of a sudden, a month, 2 months later, you see kids walking around, their phone is grayscaled, because, one of the things we talk about is how phones and, apps are able to kind of get you with colors and notifications. And you have kids resetting their phones, teaching their friends how to reset their phones, teaching their parents a lot of the times. We've had parents come to us and say, my child has changed our whole family dynamic. They've helped us develop family technology contracts and how we should all be using technology. And, my son tells me to put down my phone at dinner, all these things those stories are really impactful. And so we've just been excited to keep hearing about those. I think on there's a more serious side to this where, through our work, we heard that some kids were struggling more than a prevention product could basically treat. And for those folks, we started to develop treatment that's specific for this category, because we've seen there's just a very high comorbidity rate with depression, anxiety, OCD, ADHD, if you have problems with technology. And so we created our own pathways for those people to get help as well. And there's been incredible stories for how we've changed those people's lives, which is, on a much deeper level than on the prevention tool.
Yeah, and that's particularly fascinating to me, and I wanted to have you on the show, because you really pay attention to detail, being solution focused and needs based. You look at the environment and say, what do they need? We have all these experts, we have all these portfolios, but we can give you what your school needs, and then allows the administrator and teacher not to fit a round peg in a square hole, but to build a product that fits the environment they're in. That's really a really beautiful thing. When you talk about having some of these pivots, I'm a believer that for a vast majority of kids, the only way we're going to communicate very complex issues about media is through media. We can't browbeat them with some kind of like, don't do. We have to say, listen, media has a tremendous potential to be good, but I think you might agree, it's also a predatory environment, because it's so unregulated and because children haven't been taught the lessons that you're teaching them. They can fall prey to things like the screen, all kinds of modulations of their behavior that they don't even realize is going on. Is this universally been something that even teachers and administrators have acknowledged has helped the kids better in the classroom?
what you say is really accurate, and we've always likened it to opening the liquor cabinet and saying free for all from age 5 and up is how we've treated technology in this country today, which is really a wild thing in terms of dopamine response. It's very similar to alcohol or to cigarettes, in the sense of that's what kind of keeps us coming back. A lot of teachers that are parents definitely know it's a problem. Administrators that are parents definitely know it's a problem, because if you have kids today, you can see it and you can feel it, and there's definitely a sense of we're in a maze. What do we do? And I think that's how we've approached this. Is we want to demystify this for everyone, and so that's really has been the goal for us, is to demystify it for everyone. And the teachers and administrators that know push hard for this, and for the ones that don't, we want to educate them on why they should.
All right, we have one more opportunity to come back and listen to some advice from you. After a short break, we're going to ask Bryce to share some final comments, insights, and inspiration. Stay tuned. It's a lot of fun, and you don't want to miss it.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power, and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we talked about innovations that connect technology with common sense and may provide a healthier learning environment for our children. Let's see what final insights and inspiration Bryce has to share with us. Bryce, it's up to you now.
Thanks, Peter. Just want to make it clear for anyone out there, whether it's a parent who feels like their family's struggling with this, whether it's a school who knows that this is an issue in their classrooms, or whether it's prevention services, treatment centers, anyone who may be listening to this, that we are here to help demystify this for you. And, the solutions are different, and we've tailored them to each of you for that reason. And that's why we started with an assessment, so that we could figure out what are the needs of each of you and be able to actually serve them in a really tailored and custom way. And basically, if you're thinking about this as any of those people, just be sure to find our website, find my email, make sure to include them in the show notes as well. But we're pixelhealth.io is our website. And if you can fill out a contact form, you can take an assessment, you can do whatever you need to do and see all of our information there. Again, we're supported by incredible researchers, clinicians, educators, all of the above. We're not doing this alone. I want to be clear on that as well. But for next school year, I know this school year is coming to a close. Please join our wait list, because we'd love to support your school and community. And you'll see that kind of flicking that first domino is able to set off an entire chain reaction that does really amazing things for communities. And we've seen it firsthand all year. And we'd be excited to have you as part of that. So please reach out and don't hesitate. I'm happy to also hop on the phone individually with any one of you, because this is what we do for a living, and we're very, very passionate about it.
So when we talk about teachers, and they're essential, and actually they're suffering from stress and anxiety just like kids are. I mean, it's not like it just targets children. The world has now, in this whole new era of talking about stress and anxiety, and likely there is more. And likely, if it is, it seems to correlate with the advent of technological tools that we're not well trained in using. No different than handing a gun to a 4-year-old or a hammer to a 3-year-old to walk around the house. There is no real damage control if you just hand over access to the internet and the web to children. Do you really think that these tools in the classroom will make life easier is it worth the effort for a teacher? Will it make life easier for teaching all the other subjects and things that are out there?
Well, we actually know for a fact that all of the teachers that have utilized Pixel Digital Health and all the students, I mean, a majority of them have changed actually their day-to-day habits. All of the teachers say that they would use this again, and they will continue to do so because I think they're seeing the chain reaction of the effects of this, because their kids are more focused in the classroom. They said this is the subject they're most excited to come to class for because it's something that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and they know is going to help them a lot. And it's something that I think the teachers can see and feel the engagement. And, obviously they have to teach calculus because that's important too, but this is a subject that for kids and for classrooms and communities has a really, really, really big change for the positive. And, again, we've made it so that teachers don't have to spend a lot of their time figuring this stuff out. So we figured it all out for them to be able to say, here you go. We've created all the materials for you. Just watch your kids and see how they engage with this. We've made it very discussion based so that kids get really excited and can talk about what's going on for their specific friend groups, across all these different issues. We talk about algorithms, we talk about body image, we talk about privacy and safety, we talked about misinformation, we talk about cyberbullying, all of these topics in a way that's really engaging for kids. And so, we're just excited to see more and more communities change, and that's really our goal.
Well, in the few seconds we have left, can you sort of talk about what you see in the future for technology in the classroom?
It's a great question. We actually see the pendulum sort of going back the other way in the sense that people are going to be really mindful and careful about their technologies. There's so many tools and things that we're supposed to be doing now with our phones and with our desktops. And I think a lot of those are really good. But I think right now what we're doing is pruning sort of the ones that aren't so additive to our lives and not so beneficial. And I think it's important that not only are the administrators and the parents having the conversations as to what feels good for them to use, but it's the kids themselves. And I think that's really what is going to happen over the next few years is we're going to be super mindful about the things that we're using and be able to make really great decisions as to how we use technology in the future. And so I think that's what we're going to see in the next few years is really mindful use. And it starts with education and programs like this that help us find that.
Bryce, thank you so much for sharing your story and this wonderful information. I encourage people to go check out your website. And thank you all for joining us today. Check out our website, ahealthyiowa.org, and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.